Hi, everybody, and welcome to another video on choosing your niche. I think you guys all know me by now. I'm Dyan Ferguson, a MAP practitioner, a relationship coach, and the program advisor here at the MAP Coaching Institute. And I'm loving having these conversations with people about choosing a niche. It's really important, and most people don't get it right the first time. So it's a really interesting topic to dive into. So today I'm super excited to talk to Denise Schneps. Of course, she's one of our MAP practitioners, but Denise has a really extensive background. Denise, I just know a tiny bit of it. I know you spent a lot of time as an international business consultant. I know you more as a therapist, and of course, you're a MAP practitioner. So maybe it would just help us get grounded with just a little bit of an overview of your professional past.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about this. The whole topic of niches is fascinating because it really is something that comes in a flow in stages and experiences. I don't think you can just pick a niche out of the air. It's something that really comes from lived, embodied experiences, good, bad, and ugly. And of course, like every experience, it depends on what you do with it. So I had built a very successful business in international management, but I didn't feel it was rewarding enough. So I studied executive coaching and I went to, got accredited and all that. And even that I felt was kind of limited. So I started going into my own personal work with a very good therapist and started and then became a therapist myself. And as I was kind of going along that path, all of a sudden my daughter became very unwell about 10 years ago. And I was absolutely, how do I say, completely preoccupied with trying to help her and find a way forward for her because the mental health services were really failing us completely. So I did look at different methods and searched around and searched around. And then 4 years ago, I came across MAP. Initially, it was to find out, how this might help her, but then it started helping me.
Mhm.
And then I decided, gosh, I want to become certified. And so I needed somebody to practice on because, we have to do a lot of practice sessions. She was my guinea pig. She was living with us.
Yeah.
So I was doing MAP sessions with her, and lo and behold, she started to make incredible progress. And even today, I mean, so within a year, she was off on her own, living in her own place, managing her life more or less, with a little bit of help. Um, and so, that was really rewarding, and satisfying. So I thought, okay, I know what my niche is now. I'm going to
Yeah.
go work with people in extreme states because I really felt a deep calling to make a difference there because there's so much suffering in this area. And I did try it for about a year. And after learning a lot and experiencing a lot, I found that I just didn't have the resources, time, or material really to help people in those states because they need daily attention, like all the time, every day, like I had done with my daughter. So very regretfully, I let go of that niche and I thought, okay, in parallel to that, I was still working as an executive coach for different coaching firms. And I was running into people that were experiencing really deep problems. Some of them were already like, some were quite serious, and others were, I just want to get over my, imposter syndrome. So I'd say to them, hey, I got this method if you want to try it out. And they'd go, yeah, let me try it. So we would do some map sessions. And I mean, in every single case, I think I have at least 15 or 20 cases of people, particularly women, who, were getting great feedback from their bosses. They were getting new jobs, getting promoted, really just shining. And I thought, why is, the contrast was so striking. I thought, oh my gosh, I really have to follow this. And so I started thinking, well, why? Why is it working so quickly for these people? And after a bit of thinking about it, I realized because these guys are really performance driven. They're not coming to you to solve a trauma directly or think about, issues um, that, are more, let's say, personal development. They're looking at how can I run faster and jump higher.
Hmm.
So when they can't jump and you say, hey, how about this? And then you dissolve whatever traumas are under there, they don't even necessarily care or aren't necessarily worried about, getting underneath the surface of it. But when it works, they're delighted, absolutely delighted. They're proud of themselves, they're happy, they're excited. And that excited me because I was like, wow, this is great. They're doing so well. And with only 3 or 4 sessions. So that's when I decided to follow that niche more directly. And I'm actually looking into planning and designing an executive coaching course for MAP practitioners. I do think it's important to have some business experience or at least to be conscious of the business experience you've had. If not as a manager, then someone working in an organization, because we really do learn from being poorly managed. We know that's just not the right way. So I'm not saying that you have to like have executive experience necessarily to be an executive coach, but you do need to have had some exposure to the business world to understand the context in which they're working.
Yeah, absolutely, Denise. Great. Thank you. Thank you. This is super interesting.
Okay.
And so I think this is going to be really helpful to the people listening along this process of choosing a
Okay.
niche or your
Good.
niche also kind of finding you. But
Right.
let's make it even a little bit more personal because when we were chatting earlier, you were telling me that you're actually even niching down
Yeah.
a little bit more, and just how that related to some of your own
Yeah.
experience.
Okay, great. Thanks for the question. Um, well, executive coaching is a really large field. I mean, it's just really massive. Um, I was involved in with one of my coaching firms that I work for with a program called Women in Leadership. Excuse me. And so I was doing a lot of MAP with these women and saw a huge impact. And then I thought, well, I really love that so much because women are so important to, the next steps in our world, the evolution in society and in business and in every area. I've never been a big women's liber, been out there demonstrating or anything like that, but I have been, in a backhanded way, I have experienced, difficulties as a woman, being fired, being, limited or excluded, or, um, and then as a coach, I saw so many women whose potential was being limited and by their own thoughts and certainly by their environments. Um, and so I came up with an idea that, well, what if I should focus on emerging and empowering and helping women become their very best in their work, whether it's, it can be executive, but it can also be just, in their experience in the working world, which has been so male dominated. I don't need to even say that. So this again kind of grew gently and slowly in my mind and step by step. And now I'm feeling really excited about it because I know that there's an embodied experience in me that I've experienced. And I've also seen it in other women that it's so important that the niche that we decide on has to really be something that we feel passionate about, that we've lived, and we can take our, good, bad, and ugly experiences and then use them in a constructive way to
Mm.
help us.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Denise. I love that. So, and I look forward to hearing how this just continues to actually get clear because this is how this process works. The more we step in, the more clear it becomes. Um, and so, maybe do you have one or two case studies? You did tell us on a high level earlier of some of the kinds of wins that
Yeah.
you see, but I'd love to maybe just hear a story or two
Okay.
from a
I have two
woman.
extremes. I have two
Great.
extremes.
Okay.
One, a lady came to me who was on her knees. She was
Mm,
absolutely, I mean, she was really in bad shape because she had been called out in her organization. Anybody can call an investigation on anybody else, particularly if you're a high level manager. She was a very high level manager, and her boss told her that she was being investigated, but she didn't know why. And her boss never told her why. She had no idea what the problem was. And so little by little, this started eating away at her because she was being disciplined and told that she had to do something different, but she didn't know what. So she started really experiencing deep, feelings of anxiety and fear. Her doctor had to give her medications. And so we started out with a classical coaching situation, but very quickly into it, I said, "Wow, we really do have to get around, get around this issue of your anxiety and just feeling so vulnerable." And so we started doing MAP. And after about 5, 6 sessions, she came off her meds. We ended up having a three-way conversation with her and her boss that went amazingly. And basically, she, slid out of that scenario. They cleared up the problem with the investigation. And of course, needless to say, within 3 months, she'd found a much better job in London, which is where she really wanted to live. So that's one of the stories. That was
great.
kind of on the extreme end. Then on the lighter end, there was a woman who I just coached recently who was really good at her job, very good technically, a real expert. But she said that she wasn't visible enough. One of the goals she decided for the coaching was that she wanted to be more visible. And then one day she came to me, and she said, I'm so fed up because I put an idea out there. Nobody does anything with it. And then somebody else comes along and takes the idea and takes the credit for it.
Mhm.
It just happens all the time. So after a little bit of digging, we found out that even though she's really competent at what she does, she had a belief in her that she wasn't smart enough to
Mm,
be able to do, be visible and all those things. Because when she was a kid, she had been told that her sister was good in intellectual, school stuff, and she was the sport person who was good at sport. And at school, worse than that, she'd been told because they didn't know she was dyslexic. They told her she should go work as a cashier. And she had this very technical job that was in the field of ecology, and um, she was the one who had to tell the company if they were inside the rules or not inside the rules. I don't know. But anyway, so we did a couple of map sessions on these things, two or three. We designed a strategy for her about what she could bring to the business. And well, lo and behold, just like within 2 or 3 weeks, she found herself in front of her boss's boss, explaining this strategy that she could implement that would increase their ecological positioning and, all kinds of good stuff coming out of it. And the guy on the spot said, "Okay, I'm going to give you permission to hire another person. I'm giving you a budget to hire another person. And I want you to take this over and still oversee it, but you are now going to have this higher position." And she's going to travel and see all this stuff and do all these things. And she came back, she says, "I'm so proud of myself. I did it. I did it." And I'm getting chills just thinking about it,
yeah,
to see what this can do for people.
yeah. Thank you, Denise. These are great stories. And what I love about the stories is they share a little bit about what you're doing with clients, what you can do, what MAP is bringing to executive coaching. So maybe just one final question. So, because I'm imagining this video might catch the eyes of maybe someone who's already an executive coach someone who's thinking about MAP or someone who has some business background thinking about executive coaching. So maybe just, and because I did hear you say earlier, as you were already doing executive coaching and you said to some of your clients, hey, I have this method. Do you want to give it a try? But now that you've got some experience under your belt, so to speak, working with executive clients and getting some great results, how do you plan to position it going forward?
Right.
Or do you, or maybe that's, yeah, what are your thoughts about presenting MAP as an option in that context going forward?
Right. Well, I've been thinking a lot about this, obviously, because, now that I feel that this niche is important, what I'm realizing is that we shouldn't lead with the solution, with the method. The method, if we talk to people about the method, you know, it's harder for them to connect it to their own problem. So what I'm doing now is I'm identifying the key challenges that women face in the working world around their own self-image, their the problem of self-doubt or imposter syndrome or any other issues, maybe feeling guilty about standing out or being visible or whatever their issue is. So I'm focusing more now on positioning the problem and then offering them solutions to that. What's going to help
Right.
them, but not necessarily putting MAP out there. I mean, if they
Mhm.
already know about MAP or if they've heard of it, that's great. But um, I don't think you can go through the front door so much with executive coaching, at least right
Yeah.
now. I think eventually we will. And I think that it's possible that big corporations who hire lots of coaches with, mindfulness, methods and different things, they're slowly moving into that world of, things that aren't so task focused and more, development oriented in terms of a person's balance, in their head and their heart, and not so much just human resources.
Mm.
Traditional coaching says don't go into that deep stuff. That's for the therapists. Stay with the coaching, methods on how to do it. But it also is important about how to be it. And that's why MAP is so great because you don't have to, be afraid to talk about some of these deeper issues without having to bring it all into the conscious mind or do a whole therapy about it. Super conscious is doing all that for you. So all you have to do is really identify the barrier, the blockage, and then work on it with MAP.
Mm.
So I'm still working on what you're, to
Yeah.
answer your question, but
No, no,
that's
no.
where
I love your answer, Denise. Thank you, thank you. And just a reminder to every coach out there, right, is when we're on those sales calls or whatever form of communication we're having with a prospective client, we don't talk about the method. We talk about what the client wants, the challenge, the
yeah,
what
their
they,
problem. The more they feel you
yeah,
understand their problem, the more they're going to trust that you can bring the
right.
solution.
Exactly, exactly. And then I love that you also just gave us a little bit more insight again as to how MAP is really a good fit for your executive sessions. You can
Absolutely.
resolve these deeper issues without actually having to have it look something like a therapy session, which
Yeah.
people have
Yeah.
traditionally avoided in these contexts. So,
Yeah. And not to mention that therapy, as much as I did and appreciate the work I was able to do, it's slow
yeah,
and it's painful.
yeah,
So you're having to drag all this stuff out of the, past and look at it and poke it and all that. And, people in business don't feel, you know,
yeah.
they just don't want to go there with that.
They don't want to go there. And yet, I mean, what you're saying inherent in the case studies that you share with us, and that's where the issues are actually happening. That's
Oh,
where the clearing,
absolutely.
the transformation needs to happen. So MAP is this beautiful solution which gets to the actual root
Yeah.
without doing something that looks like therapy.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Denise. This was
Welcome.
really
Pleasure.
great. I think it's going
Thank
to
you
be
for the
super
opportunity.
helpful for people and look forward to hearing how this unfolds for you.
Yeah, I'll be happy to chat with anybody who wants to, if that's helpful.
Great. Okay. Thank you,
Okay,
Denise. And I know,
take
of
care.
course, you do have a profile on the Coaches
Yes.
Directory in the MAP website. So that's a great place for people to hear more about what you're doing or to reach out.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Denise.
Take
Bye
care.
for now.
Bye.